Coach Warren Ryan was in good humour for this afternoon's training session, despite the likely loss of Adam McDougall this weekend. But perhaps his mood was buoyed by news that centre Matt Gidley would return after a week off with a groin strain.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident taking the field. I had a good hit out yesterday morning. It pulled up pretty well today, and I'll have a run with the boys this afternoon. But I'm really confident playing this weekend.
After a bit of cross-training, the boys got down to business. Penrith is just 1 point ahead of Newcastle on the ladder. Andrew Johns well aware that every kick will count. To soccer, and the Breakers are in Adelaide preparing for tomorrow night's clash with the Adelaide Force. Travis Dodd will be keen to show his style against his former club, and bench player Darren Smith will be out for at least a week with a hamstring tear. Glenn Moore returns to the starting lineup this week, with Luke Tomic replacing suspended striker Andy Harper.
Andrew Johns and Brett Kamali, in my opinion, are both likely to end up in the Australian Test side to be picked within weeks. Unfortunately for Joey, it looks like his versatility and his athleticism could work against him. And I think the selectors personally should pick the best halfback for the job. Now, the interchange rule is gaining momentum again. The only system I think that can work is the old Super League rule, with 2 permanent replacements and 2 interchange players. This will cover the NRL's legal issue and also let the game get back to the real essence of what it's all about, getting on top of your opponent and wearing him down. Another issue that's hotting up for the NRL is the proposed salary cap for next year. Some players are headed for massive pay cuts. As a player, you would quickly start working out what's left when you divide $3.25 million by 25 players. Keep in mind that the top 2 or 3 players are still getting $400,000. There's not going to be much left in the kitty. And to the rescue, England comes calling, with no salary cap and plenty of English pounds. Brad Fittler and the Johns brothers are just a few of the top-line players we could lose unless the planned cap is revised. The St George Illawarra Dragons are certainly left with some mental carnage after last week's 15-9 loss to the West Tigers at Wynn Stadium. In the lead up to that game, the captain and the co-captain wrote letters to their fans stating that this was a game to turn their season around, and basically put the word on the line publicly and also personally. It remains to be seen how the individual players will recover from the disappointment, but they won't have long to dwell on it as they play the Warriors at Auckland on this weekend. Auckland is busting for a victory after 2 losses in a row, and St George won't get any sympathy at all from the Kiwi crowd. I've tipped Auckland to win. In other round 7 matches this week, the Melbourne Storm to beat Parramatta Eels, Cronulla to beat Northern Eagles, Canterbury Bulldogs will be too good for the North Queensland Cowboys, and Newcastle, Brisbane, West Tigers to win their games. Well, good luck with the tips. I'm Paul Harrigan for NBN News.
The sound of razors and the deft hands of hairdressers made for a common scenario across the Hunter today as baldness swept the region in epidemic proportions. These Cardiff milkos joined in the cause to raise funds for research into leukemia, collecting $5,000 while they were at it. Further up the valley, Steggles workers didn't chicken out either. But perhaps one of the bravest sights was Naomi Seacombe, a Coal Point mum who drew a captive and generous audience when she lost her locks in front of an entire school, including her own kids. It was a similar story at Maitland High when students were offered a more tempting opportunity to have their teachers scalp. Further up the schooling ladder, tertiary institutions also joined in, Newcastle University academics rising to the challenge and digging deep. They responded to calls from leukemia survivor Rob Nichol, who overcame the disease after a bone marrow transplant 2 years ago.
Within a day I had 10 people, today we've got 40 people, and we hope to raise about $5,000 just from the staff.
The day is expected to raise more than $1 million nationwide for the Leukemia Foundation. Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
The usually quiet waters at Tacoma were anything but today, as 50 barefoot ski enthusiasts stood up to the perfect conditions. It's the 6th of 8 rounds, which includes the Australian title, and seems to appeal to more than just the competitors.
We're looking at around about 100 miles per hour. One of our skiers was clocked at about 110 by the police radar at our last meeting.
And one-time Australian sub-junior champion Ross Wilson has made the meet, hoping to take out the junior division this year. The 14-year-old is already leading the point score, but does realise that staying on top is only one of many challenges.
Finishing mainly, and with the water conditions, if it's rough, it's harder to get home.
Fortunately, however, the conditions today have been ideal for the competition, placing all competitors in the same boat. And the rewards at the end only add to the challenge.
They have trophies and cash prizes and so forth, so there's a lot of incentive there to get out and go hard.
Finals for this round will be slogged out tomorrow. Adam Harper, NBN News. Muswellbrook South Public School has more than 500 students, but after last night's blaze, nearly 100 of them are without classrooms and will now miss out on several days of school.
We don't have any power to the front of the school because it went through this block.
Fire crews arrived on the scene shortly after 4 a.m. to find the roof collapsed and the building still burning.
It has been deliberately lit. The fire has gone up into the ceiling of the building, and it's burnt from one end to the other in the ceiling area, and then it's dropped down into the classrooms.
Principal Diane Nightingale is asking students who use the classrooms and surrounding rooms not to come into school until the damage has been cleared. And to help do that, a group of concerned parents have volunteered their services.
From just about when it was turning light this morning, parents have been coming in to help, and there's a group of parents that have been here working for a lot of hours now, helping with the fire brigade people to try and salvage anything that we can.
There were 6 other fires reported in the area last night, and although none were as serious, it's believed that they were all deliberately lit. Adam Harper, NBN News.
The trailer was launched at a special screening at the Birmingham Gardens Regal Cinema. Performing Arts Newcastle behind the promotion, which showcases the region's many natural and man-made attractions. The commercial will be screened at cinemas across Australia, with the hope producers who see it will seriously consider the Hunter region for their film and TV productions. Also screening in the Hunter now, 15 Amore, a film shot at Hinton and starring local actors and crewed locally. It's already picked up People's Choice Awards in Aspen and Noosa. Other projects are in the pipeline, including a short art house film that, thanks to Maitland Council, can be shot at the jail there. It'll be called The Big House. Written and to be directed by Australian actress Rachel Ward, it'll be a short film. But a feature that's pencilled in for shooting later this year is a $1.5 million production to be directed by Kelvin Crumplin, titled Code Black, a full-length commercial thriller that'll be shot in Newcastle, Maitland and other Hunter locales. Matt Carden, NBN News.
Camera.
Big secret. Trust. She trusted me and I trusted her.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. Thanks.
Exactly how many shares were sold and how much money was raised by Impulse remains a secret, but the regional airline will not be controlled by AMP. Though the stake is significant, it still amounts to only a minority shareholding. Impulse says the money will be used to develop new routes once the regulation comes into force later this year.
An 8-under par round 64, including an eagle at the last, was enough to secure Green a 2-shot win at the Queensland PGA and his first tournament.
It was a bit of a surprise. I wasn't all that keen in going up there after a pretty long Australian season, but went up there and had a really good last round, and yeah, it was great.
In preparation for a full season on the Australian PGA circuit next summer, Green will head overseas for more tournaments.
I haven't been close for a while actually. It was good to get into contention, and then to go on with it was great. So hopefully, yeah, I can take that feeling into a couple other tournaments and maybe get a couple more wins.
The oldest sporting trophy in Australia is now up for grabs by both Newcastle and Central Coast Australian rules teams this season. Around since the 1880s, the Black Diamond Cup is the jewel for clubs in this year's combined competition. In an effort to lift the profile of the sport in the area, the amalgamation will see 9 teams chase the title in season 2000, which kicks off this weekend. And today of all days was possibly the best to unveil the new indoor lawn bowls facility in the Hunter. A part of East Cessnock Bowling Club's $3.2 million refurbishments has been the inclusion of the indoor facility, the only one in the Hunter and only the 4th in the state. And given the weather today, it was a popular venue to say the least, with a host of Australian and state players testing out the new surface.
After more than a decade, investors have been invited in from the cold. For the second time since 1937, the Newcastle Stock Exchange was opened for business.
I officially declare the Newcastle Stock Exchange open for trading.
Financial Services Minister Joe Hockey says the NXS will be a boon for the Hunter and all regions across Australia, as small and medium-sized businesses who can't get a listing with the Australian Stock Exchange will now have a market for raising capital.
Once you can get money to support the good ideas and the good initiatives and the enthusiasm, then the sky's the limit for the Hunter.
Newcastle once again has its own stock exchange. There are no listings yet, but the NSX says that will soon change.
We've got an investment company from Sydney that's been going since the early 80s. That's probably going to be the first listing. That's Winpar Holdings, and we also have some agricultural companies that we're talking to, plus one of the major building societies we're also talking to about listing.
Initially, the Newcastle Stock Exchange will only trade between 10:30 and 12:30, Monday to Friday.
While Ray Nelson was hard at work today as a real estate agent, it's his knowledge of rugby, not houses, that he'll be selling in Sri Lanka. Early next month, he'll coach the country's army side before returning later in the year as an advisor to the national coach.
I see it as a chance to get into the international coaching loop, for lack of a better word. I really feel that that's where the benefit to me is going to be.
But for now, Ray's more concerned with taking his Newcastle representative team to the top at Country Week at Orange in Easter, with the side enduring an army workout at the Singleton base on Saturday. Rivals have already cited Newcastle as the one to beat, and the coach believes it's not just because the lineup includes ex-wildfires.
You could attribute that to part of it, but I don't think it's totally it. I would say they'd see us as a more professional outfit.
Meanwhile, this wasn't a preview of the Australian Masters Games opening ceremony, but it was the opening of an office for organisers. New business partner Peach Advertising also unveiled the game's logo, while this quilt will take its place in the Hunters Sporting Hall of Fame after the event ends. The Breakers may have been beaten last weekend, but Lee Sterry was satisfied enough to stick with the same starting 11.
At the end of the day, we took 2 goals in the last 10 minutes.
And the game before against Melbourne Knights, I thought we had within our keeping. We just didn't punish them early enough and didn't get the goal that we needed. So, you know, there's no need to go panicking at this stage.
Damien Smith could be the only change to the 14 should the defender recover from a hamstring injury. The Breakers' preparations have already been affected by the weather, and Lee Sterry isn't keen to play on a wet track.
I think it disadvantages us because I think we've got a quick side and tends to slow people down and bring them all down to a sort of draft horse type pace.
But the last time the two sides met, the Breakers broke a losing streak at Canberra's expense, something they'll no doubt be hoping to repeat. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
Fortune finally favoured the organisers of Surfest 2000 as a clean 2-metre swell lined up along the point of Newcastle Beach. Conditions were close to perfect and no one made better use of them than North Coast carver Trent Munro. He notched the highest heat score of the day with a committed display of power surfing.
There's some really nice lefts off the ledge out there and they just kind of run all the way through, so I'm pretty stoked to get some nice waves for a Conas for once.
Not everyone was so lucky. Sydney's Joel Fitzgerald was lucky to survive this pounding, while Angari's Sam Carrier snapped his board in the same spot minutes later and was forced to scramble over the rocks to pick up a replacement. American rookie Bobby Martinez steered clear of the trouble to record another impressive win.
A couple of waves I didn't go on and there were just rocks boiling straight in front of me, you know, and I think Joel went and ate it and then Sam broke his board and luckily that didn't happen to me.
It was a disastrous day for the local contingent. Nick Wood couldn't buy a decent wave in his heat, while Dan Frodsham got one of the rides of the day but had no backups and failed to progress. It was a similar story for giant killer Travis Lynch, while Simon Robinson was also knocked out. Bruce McKenzie, NBN News.
Union tempers boiled after a 2-hour wait to meet the administrator. Sacked workers so close to the finish feared another delay. The state government had made its check out to the administrator and not the employees' fund. But this final glitch was overcome. The pressure was finally over. After 2 months and 2 days of picketing in stifling heat or pouring rain, ordinary people placed under the national spotlight had won their fight. The final march to collect $11.2 million began in groups of 20. State and federal governments supplied $4 million of the funds used to write 314 cheques. Workers went through alphabetically, except for Derek Frew. He was the first to do the paperwork and then signed for his money. His wife was operated on this morning after a serious car accident.
They let me jump the queue so I can get back to my 4 kids at home. It's nice to have it out the road and move on sort of thing.
All entitlements will be paid and the majority of workers will receive between $30,000 and $60,000. A magnificent victory according to the union.
This is the first step for the campaign. They've now got all their entitlement. The next step of the campaign is to get the legislation changed so that no worker has to go through this again.
David McElwain, NBN News. Despite promising skies at Hinton last night, both the Victoria Hotel and the SES were preparing for the area to be isolated.
We're doing ferry trips tomorrow morning for people to go to work from about 6 through till 9, and then probably about from 3 o'clock through till 6.
Patterson itself was well underwater and only the top story of this house was safe. The road north from Hinton was just passable last night, but though the general flood threat had diminished today, there was no way through, even in a four-wheel drive. With the rain easing overnight, so too have the floodwaters. There are still roads closed between Morpeth and Largs and Hinton and Wallalong, but farmers are not yet bringing their livestock down from high ground. And while dark skies may yet realise their fears, Newcastle Harbour is already showing the effects of the water which has raced down the valley. Meanwhile, Hunter Water reports that the equivalent of the region's entire water requirement for the year has flowed away with the floods.
Chichester yesterday was probably spilling over the spillway at about its own capacity rate every day. So it holds about 20,000 megalitres and we were spilling that much.
The extra rain has come at a time when all dams are full, adding to arguments for more capacity.
They've got all the modern technology with all the computers and the upgrades to set them up for excellent primary education.
Port Stephens is already famous for its big peach and its big bug. But growing deep in Jeff Pritchell's veggie patch are some of the largest pumpkins the small village of Saltash has ever seen. Jeff planted 3 giant Atlantic pumpkin seeds 4.5 months ago just to see what would happen.
I had no idea they were going to be this big. Most of them only grew to a certain size and they fell off the vines, but the 3 would kept going. They just kept going and going and going, you know.
They were growing beautifully until last week when constant rain caused the stems to rot and fall off. But while Jeff was pleased with these 100-kilo whoppers, the real surprise was what the 3rd seed developed into. 230 kilograms, just short of a national record.
Yeah, everyone calls me the pumpkin man. Yeah, it's very exciting, especially when it started getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
The rotted stem meant Jeff could no longer seek the ultimate glory for a giant veggie farmer, with a major competition just 1 week away.
I did plan to enter to in the show at Canberra in the biggest, heaviest pumpkin, but never worked out that way.
But for now, it's back to the shed as farmer Jeff dreams of next year's patch. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
From the 14th of May, the skies over Williamtown will inherit a very different kind of jet aircraft. It follows news that Qantas is preparing to launch a new 64-seat passenger jet, the BA146, to provide the only service of its kind between Newcastle, Brisbane and Melbourne.
It's good. It shows a sign that our traffic's growing and people want to come here as well.
Qantas will operate the service through the several carriers that make up Qantas Regional Airlines, and it seems other airlines have the same idea. In recent days, Impulse has announced Canberra as its new jet base and the regional hub for its new services. But Newcastle Airport manager Sandy White says healthy competition in our skies can only be a good thing as the effects of deregulation kick in.
Deregulation will be good for Newcastle. It'll free the airlines up and it'll allow competition to come in with more than one airline on a route, which is good. It generates cheaper fares, and we see it as being of benefit.
Qantas will preview the launch of the new jet service in early May. Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
Once a professional boxer, Johnny Travis fought for his family last night. He fell asleep watching a bout and thought noise from the TV woke him up.
When I woke up, I realised it was an alarm going off and in the hallway, and I went into the hallway to investigate, and I could see smoke everywhere.
He looked up and saw flames in the roof of his home in Broke.
And then all of a sudden I could hear a lot of crackling noises through the roof, and I thought it was time to get my children out of there.
But 3-year-old Tiffany was nowhere to be found. She had been asleep with her mum in the main bedroom.
I screamed out to Johnny that I couldn't find her, and he found her. He found her underneath the bed. So that was, it took a couple of minutes to sort of locate her in the dark. But yeah, we found her and she's safe.
4 children under 4, all evacuated using the family's emergency plan.
Johnny grabbed 2, I grabbed 2. That's sort of always been our motto with 4, you know. We've got 2 hands each, so grab 1 each, in each hand.
Smoke detectors, the difference between life and death.
I believe they've saved us. That's what woke me up. I don't think I would have woke up.
I'd advise anybody to have smoke detectors installed in their house for sure.